Conservatives are unironically advocating for the U.S. to intervene in Cuba because that worked out so well in Korea, Vietnam, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, etc., etc. I'm not surprised. We're going to talk about that. I mean, I can get started with that for the day if you want, especially considering the fact that Biden has already come out and praised the Cuban protesters after Cuba's president accuses U.S. of funding demonstrators. What's going on in Cuba at the moment is that there are some protests happening in Cuba. It's always notoriously difficult to find on-the-ground information that is not either like slanted absolutely on the side of the state and completely turns a blind eye to like the actions of the police force, for example, or slanted completely on the side of the U.S. State Department and just unnecessarily goes overboard and says like the people of Cuba are literally rising up all around trying to free themselves so they can go back to being a plantation and casino island for America or whatever under a brutal authoritarian dictatorship. There are problems with the government, but to say the economic problems with the government and not the blockade is wrong. Yeah. No, there's a fuckload of people on the streets. I mean, leftists are saying this is like a color revolution, CIA-backed situation. You know, most people, liberals, right-wingers are all saying like things that range from we need to immediately invade Cuba to look how terrible this regime has been. Communism doesn't work. We should do something about it. We should free the people of Cuba. What do you think? Is CIA involved? Yes and no. Why do I think the CIA is involved? Because it's fucking Cuba. When is the CIA not involved in an toppling or even attacking in any meaningful capacity a regime that they consider to be an ideological problem? That's definitely the reason why. Like, I feel like you can't do anything in South America without the CIA being somewhat involved. But also at the same time, I don't know if CIA is involved because here's why. They kind of suck. Lately, they haven't been doing a good job. They have done a fucking dog shit job of like toppling Venezuela, for example. Their pony on the battle against Maduro, who is literally like not even that popular. He isn't great. He was just riding the wave of Chavez and he's just still riding that wave and is pretty brutal overall and has unfortunately had to deal with a lot of the consequences of embargoes and the sanctions placed on Venezuela that destroyed their economy. Like, the CIA couldn't even topple him. Like, that's kind of fucking lame, dude. What, you didn't have paramilitary groups that you could train so they would like murder and rape nuns and stuff and do that in Venezuela? It's kind of a L, dude. Kind of an L, dog. You know, that's the reason why I'm also like, I mean, is the CIA involved? I don't really know. I feel like they're too busy tweeting about how they're LGBT CIA now, you know. Get ready for all the Cuban refugees. You're laughing. Castro took all of my family's slaves and you're laughing. I mean, it's not always like that. It's not always like that. Like, there are definitely poor people that have like escaped Cuba too, that ran away. From what I understand, talking to Cubans, younger generations in Cuba, ironically, this is different than like literally every other situation around the world in capitalist countries and even like in post-communist countries as well. Younger generations in Cuba, like the current administration versus the older generations in Cuba, feel as though, you know, their material possessions were stolen from them and that their livelihood and their lives were better under an authoritarian fascist dictatorship. That's actually the opposite in most places. In most places around the world, younger people want neoliberal capitalism in post-communist nations and stuff. Whereas, like, if you look at Russia, for example, a lot of older people in Russia feel that the stability created by the USSR and the power that they had, you know what I mean? Like a world superpower, that was something to be proud of, and they want to go back to that. So I'll just say this much. There are people protesting in the streets. I'm not going to show you the, like, I am Fidel counter protests for that are pro-revolution. I'll show you, like, what is going on first, or what is the reason why people are just, like, fucking losing their shit right now, talking about, like, how, you know, Cuba is popping off. Prominent thin blue line flag at the anti-Cuba pro-intervention rally in Miami today. Yeah, of course. Like, or did you see the tweet about Pew deleting a poll that by older people actually miss communism in Eastern European countries? Graphic in the replies. Pew Research Center deleted the poll showing the most Eastern European countries above a certain age thinks things were better under communism. Yeah, the reason why they think that is because there was still a concentration of wealth and power at the top under the USSR as well. But not wealth, but definitely a concentration of power at the top. But at least the government was forced to provide certain amenities for all of its citizens as best as they possibly could. Most significant reason why people say life was better under communism than it is now, or, I mean, obviously, the most significant factor for this is because, like, they had more power. Like they felt as though they were part of a collective unit that had more power, more prominence. And it doesn't really matter because the distribution of power shifted to the hands of the few regardless. And now, you know, the basic amenities are still not being provided. You know what I mean? Protests did happen in several cities and the protests are legitimate. I'm sorry to the lefties who are going to say they're illegitimate. No, they are legitimate. Of course they're legitimate. Part of the reason why these protests are happening is because there's a lack of medical supplies. COVID has made everything a lot worse for them, and they're complaining about rising prices. Protests are also a healthy part of every fucking government. Don't say mass. I mean, there's a lot of fucking people. It's still a lot of people. Come on. Now, as is the case with every single protest that happens outside of America, especially in foreign nations that we want to get involved with, any protest means like, oh, the government has to be toppled immediately. It's never like, hey, the government's fucking up and they should do a better job. Except, you know, there are other conditions that make it hard that the United States has basically played a significant role in, like the embargo, which only 2 countries refused to lift in the recent UN vote that took place. Care to guess who those 2 countries were? United States of America and Israel. They're upset about the rising cost of food, and they're upset about not getting the necessary medical supplies. Cuba has also taken action and also limited internet access. So long as the Cuban government doesn't ignore the protests, it is a reasonable demonstration of people's democratic freedom and freedom of speech. Hopefully the government responds properly instead of engaging in police brutality like America loves to do. No, of course they're engaging in police brutality. Are you kidding me? Obviously they are. It's fucking Cuba. Let's be goddamn real for a second. Like the thing that Marxist-Leninists like oftentimes will refuse to admit unless they're in a private conversation amongst themselves talking shit about anarchists, is that of course there is police violence. Of course, at least honest Marxist-Leninists will admit that violence is necessary, even though that is still debatable, and I don't agree. Where have you seen Cuban police brutalizing protesters? There are plenty of videos where, I mean, look at like any of these random fucking sock accounts that may or may not be in Cuba that are sending footage from on the ground. Do you think the sanctions placed on Cuba in any way are working because the people are turning on the government? I feel like the U.S. is starving at the people of Cuba, so they turn to their side. I mean, they've been able to work regardless of the sanctions, possibly because of aid that they have gotten from other like-minded administrations, whether it be Venezuela or others. Like I said, it's just COVID. Let's look at some videos. I wanna show you some more footage from on the ground, but they're against the current administration. There are a lot of people that are against the current administration. I can't believe they're saying TSM. Do they not realize that TSM now works with the crypto marketplace? Of course, it is always a little sus when the Cuban protest also features an American flag, but you know, that's just me, I guess. Especially considering what America is doing to Cuba, or what America has done to Cuba. But hey, that's just me, I guess. That is not enough to say that the entirety of the protest movement is like backed by the CIA or anything like that. I'm just letting you know that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm guessing the reason they fly the American flag is a symbol of democracy, which is somewhat ironic. No, I think they want imperialist takeover because they have deluded themselves into thinking that like a dictatorship, a neoliberal or a fascist dictatorship that like, or yeah, no, a neoliberal administration or a fascist dictatorship placed upon them by the American government would be far better in comparison to having autonomy. And by the way, even if they think the American flag represents freedom, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth. I'm just letting you know. I think the inception of these protests are legitimate, though. Yes, I know there are fucking counter protests. I know. Here you go. There are even larger counter protests out there that are pro fucking Fidel Castro. What did I tell you? Like, anytime shit like this happens, you have the pro-government side that is like trying to engage in the propaganda machine against the U.S. State Department side. Okay. Yeah, they have fucking they have simps on both sides. Okay, here. Cubans chanting "I am Fidel" as thousands flood the streets in defense of the revolution. What's your take on the Cuban government and how it operates? The Cuban government is interesting. I mean, first and foremost, it's still like a one-party, technically, like a one-party government. They do a lot of local elections, which are really unique. Multi-party doesn't equal democracy, by the way. I mean, look, there is some truth to that statement. Certainly. In America, we have a two-party system, but both parties don't necessarily meet the demands of the American public. That's why there are a million different things that everyday Americans would absolutely prefer to have, and yet those demands are not met, no matter how reasonable they are, and no matter how great they are. That's certainly an issue. I see the way that neoliberal capitalist America operates as a successful method of control that at least creates the idea in people's minds, instill the idea in people's minds that like there is some back and forth, there is some political back and forth, and that not all politicians are simply meeting the interests of those who own capital and putting that over those who do not. Ultimately, without political dissidence, there is no democracy. Like, there is no free speech without political dissidence. Obviously, there are limitations to that, but there should always be a legitimate back and forth. I believe that. So yeah, there are cops that are beating up protesters right now. Ultimately, the protests started because they don't have access to Cubans are upset that they don't have access to food supplies, medical supplies specifically as well. They're frustrated. There are legitimately people who are actually frustrated at the government, and the cops are, of course, suppressing that. And Cuba already does not have freedom of speech and suppresses freedom of information regularly, but now they are also blocking off access to the internet so that information doesn't come out of the island. What do you have to say to those saying this is a protest against communism specifically? Yeah, those people are charlatans, okay? People who are looking at this and saying, oh, dude, this is 100% a protest against communism. Like, this is a protest against, like, you know, the violent oppression of Cuba. Like, okay, dude, yeah, sure.
Now, as part of this bill, Florida will create a Portraits and Patriotism library so students can learn about real patriots who came to this country after seeing the horrors of these.
This is the fucking brain rot irony, okay, of people who say, like, dude, Cuba is such an authoritarian state. It's, like, literally fucking crazy. Like, they're brainwashing their children. And then, like, we have this here in America. Oh, there's no freedom of speech in Cuba. And then, like, in America, if you left it up to the Republicans, like, we would have no freedom of speech either. You think pro-Southern, pro-Confederacy education in the South is not directly a consequence of, like, propagandizing and trying to create a more favorable position and change history and continue to brainwash millions of Americans? Anyway, Lauren Boebert said Biden's statement on what's happening in Cuba failed to condemn communism or socialism. Imagine being afraid to condemn the two most harmful ideologies because you might anger your base, who clearly now embraces those ideologies. Every goddamn day, I wake up and wish for an America that exists, unfortunately, only in the dreams of Republicans. Every fucking day, I just wish that Joe Biden actually abolished ICE, that he was a Marxist, or that the American government was overtaken by Marxist infiltrators. The Democratic Party that is currently debating whether or not to expand Medicare coverage to 55-year-olds, a piece of legislation, an expansion that is so broadly popular that even Hillary Clinton added it onto her 2016 campaign, is currently being discussed. That's Marxism? That's socialism, to expand government-provided healthcare to 55-year-olds? Expand it all the way down, lower the eligibility age to 55? Really? Those are the communists, dude? The communists who gave up on $15 minimum wage, student debt relief, no solution on the housing crisis, no criminal justice reform, no universal healthcare measures? That's the communist government? Calling a bunch of random dudes with guns and boats to just sit outside of Cuban territorial waters to send a message is the kind of dumb shit that gets people killed. I hope, as crappy as Florida politics can be, that the state or federal government will step in on it. Looks like a guy out of Miami-Dade named Ozdani Velaz, who identifies himself as IG, as the owner of Velaz Contractors, is organizing some kind of armada to go to Cuba and do something. There's a spot called the Bay of Pigs that has a nice landing zone they could try. Bay of Pigs 2 Electric Boogaloo, dude. This is literally what they did in Venezuela too, by the way. Yeah, Bay of Pigs 2 will be renamed Bay of Hogs after the porky hogs that are in support of it. Love it. This is great. A plea for hashtag SOS Cuba donations via PayPal warns not the right hashtag Cuba or Cubans to avoid funds getting blocked. This is a real world example of how U.S. backing sanctions limit COVID relief to Cuba. Huh, interesting, guys. But I thought the sanctions were super targeted to Cuban officials, and also there was no issues with, like, medical supplies getting through. That's weird. What a strange situation. But yeah, the Batista numbers I brought up are important to understand because, like, one of the main criticisms of the Cuban Revolution from, like, expats, or not expats, but, like, Cuban reactionaries living in America who are literally, like, some of the most psychotic Republicans, and younger Cubans in the chat will also admit this. I lived in Miami. I will tell you. Older Cubans are a fucking... They are just... Oh, my God. Okay? They absolutely despise every other Latino population, immigrants. They fucking love shitting on Mexicans. They love shitting on everyone else. Overwhelmingly Republican, vote Republican, racist as fuck, just all sorts of shit. So if you ask those guys, I mean, the embargo, I guess, you know, it's whatever. It has to happen in order to, you know, starve out their relatives that are still living in Cuba so that they can plant a positive capitalist Chile-style regime in Cuba. But they routinely talk about the abuse and the violence that they were and their family members were subjected to under the Cuban Revolution or under the Fidel Castro regime. And that violence is absolutely marginal in comparison to any other fucking country at the time. Whether it be the United States and its domestic policies towards black people in that same fucking period of time, or whether it be any other country or the preceding Batista dictatorship that was toppled. Violence, you have to understand, unless you're a fucking baby, is unfortunately a part of politics, okay? I would choose not to have any sort of violence, of course. I think that no violence is the way to go. This notion that, like, you know, Cuba is uniquely violent or Castro was uniquely violent is ridiculous.
And there's unrest in the streets of Cuba, and it came out because, okay, we know the coronavirus is an issue. People of Cuba want their freedom, and they finally feel bold enough to protest in the streets in front of this brutal regime.
Yeah, chanting freedom, calling for the president to step down. They have a surge in the coronavirus cases, a shortage of just basic goods, things that we all might take for granted. They can't.
Bro, that's crazy, dude. That's crazy. Fox News talking about a shortage of goods in Cuba. How quickly do you think they will justify the embargo as a necessity, you think?
And that's why thousands went out in the streets yesterday. You never see this kind of dissent because it's always limited. And it's interesting because the communists did allow the dissent to go on for a couple of hours. On Twitter, there's some video of protesters turning over a police car.
That's kind of weird that they're no longer having a fucking pro-cop take here. That's so strange. Wait, that's weird. When black people do this in America, they're like, oh, what the fuck are you doing? But when the Cuban people do it in Cuba, you're like, oh, dude, this is so sick. This is poggers. I love this, dude. Please, please, no law, no order, please. Interesting take.
The regime must end now. It is not negotiable. We asked for an intern.
Okay, dude, I get it. You recovered from COVID, but like way too jacked, okay? You guys know how I feel about this. Like Gavin Newsom, too hot. You can't be like jacked and hot and be a politician. It's just like fucking, it's not. Something about that is so off. I love the Miami mayor calling for regime change in Cuba, though. That's America, baby.
International intervention led by the United States to protect the Cuban people from a bloodbath.
Dude, what a psycho. Dude, I hear shit like this and I'm like, what are you going to do? I mean, what are you going to do? That's so insane, dude. You're a fucking piece of shit, dog. You are such a piece of shit. To have no shame and openly call for a coup d'etat led by the United States like a military intervention is just nuts to me.
The question is, how do we get involved? Do we just sit there and cheer from the sidelines? Jake Sullivan?
Bro, you got to give me something more than a fucking cop yelling at a protester. If you're going to launch the argument that, like, this is brutal, this is literally, like, the least violent cop altercation I have seen since the beginning of 2020. Like, show me the fucking tear gas. Show me the rubber bullets, like, that are taking out the eyes of Cuban protesters. And then we'll start talking.
Florida is wide open. You want to see, you know, freedom? Go to Florida. And these people would like to have in Cuba what they've got in Florida.
I mean, it's true. Yes. These people would like to have in Cuba what they have in Florida, which is like no embargoes, like access to modern equipment and shit because of no embargoes. So yeah, you're right. They do. And they want it to be in fucking, they want that to be in Cuba. They want that freedom in Cuba. That's fucking insane that they're having this conversation without recognizing what that revolves around. Yeah, they want Cuba to be like Florida, A place where like a Florida courthouse had to shut down because in the aftermath of the other building that fucking pancaked and collapsed, they realized that a bunch of fucking buildings in Florida were also not up to code. You know, that kind of situation. Everyone would benefit more from being like Florida. Just the most psychotic libertarian paradise.
They have a huge potential there just with tourism alone, should they ever open up their doors and overthrow this communist. But the problem is China's got a presence there, and the problem is Russia's got a presence there. Are they going to let...
Yeah, these other communist nations like communist Russia, dude. Unacceptable, the situation in Cuba. They just don't have access to food and medicine. And that's really unacceptable. I wonder why. Oh, because communism. That's why they don't have that. Nothing else. Please don't look at anything else. Perhaps there is something else that's going on in Cuba with respect to, you know, amenities and goods that they can have access to. Nothing. Just don't think about it, dude. No, they're chanting Libertad. They're chanting Liptards. They're all hogs, brother. They're chanting Liptards out.
No, they are chanting Libertard, which means liberty.
Stop. He said Libertard.
Over 12 hours since over 32 cities in Cuba, brave people have taken to the streets to protest against communist, Marxist, evil tyranny. And so far, not a word, not a statement from Joe Biden, from the vice president, from the White House, not a word. Why are they so uncomfortable coming forward and just condemning this evil socialist Marxist regime? It's been 62 years while these people have been out there suffering.
Dude, he's so wet. He's the most moist motherfucker on the planet, dude. I swear to God. Like, the funniest thing that Donald Trump ever said was talk about how little Marco is always sweating. Just the most moist motherfucker in America. Doesn't matter. It's not just a Florida thing. He is just a moist dude. What is Biden supposed to say? Tomorrow we're going to nuke Cuba and turn it into a capitalist democracy? Even then, they would be like, why wasn't it yesterday? You know what I mean? Why didn't you nuke Cuba yesterday? Like, there's nothing that Joe Biden could say that Marco Rubio would agree with, especially when Joe Biden is saying exactly the same things that Marco Rubio is saying with respect to Cuba. What the fuck? This is the same energy with like, you know, Joe Biden is not supporting Israel hard enough as Israel was like mowing the lawn in the Gaza Strip, you know? It's like, what is he supposed to do? Just murder a fucking Palestinian child on camera? Is he supposed to do a fucking, you know, beheading? Is that when Joe Biden will demonstrate his full unconditional support to Israel? Like, is that what you expect from him? Like, I don't get it. Same with fucking Cuba. Like, what do you want him to do?
You've got a socialist regime that says to people, you have no freedom, you have no independence, you have no ability to speak freely, but you have a really good healthcare system. They don't.
They don't, except they literally have a higher life expectancy than we do. So what the fuck? Like, if they have a shit-ass healthcare system, then doesn't that mean we have an even worse healthcare system?
Some of the lawmakers are upset. They're speaking out about this. But Bernie Sanders, who a year ago praised...
The socialist?
Exactly. Praised Fidel Castro for what he's done for the kids and the education and the literacy program. But he's staying silent.
Why aren't they attacking Barack Obama and Joe Biden, who said the exact same things that Bernie Sanders said about the many benefits of the Castro regime with respect to education and healthcare and access to education and access to healthcare in general? I mean, it's the truth. Like, I don't understand. How can you fucking sit here and criticize, like, improving the literacy rate, dude? These people are such psychopaths, dude. I mean, I know why, because they don't want you to fucking read, but...
Hundreds of Cubans took to the streets in the cities around the country on Sunday to protest food and medicine shortages. That's all true. In a remarkable eruption of discontent not seen in nearly 30 years.
There is perhaps no better instance of irony that these fucking animals over at Fox News wagging their fucking fingers at the Cuban government for not being able to provide vaccines to their citizens, as like the rest of the fucking content from Fox News for the day is going to be about how vaccines make you autistic and homosexual. Are you fucking kidding me, dude? Shouldn't they be celebrating that Cuba is like free of the dangers of 5G coronavirus vaccines? Are you fucking nuts? They literally will be like, and now, next up, vaccines. Do they make you gay? Or was I gay beforehand? Why do dicks taste delicious? Find out more. I'm Brian Kilmeade. Like, you're just gonna do that? You're gonna fucking be like, these guys, they're protesting the government because the government won't give them COVID vaccines. That's crazy. What the fuck? The secret is out. The U.S. built Cuban Twitter to stir up political unrest. I remember this. I remember when they tried to fucking build a Cuban Twitter, basically. It's kind of funny, though, because, like, under our free market capitalist design, you can have other countries come in and just buy ads, right? And start literally breaking the brains of all of our body politique, basically. Like, conservatives will literally just like lose their shit and start believing more and more in like QAnon conspiracies. Meanwhile, America's trying to do that in Cuba and fucking failing to do so. Partially because they don't have the same freedom of information that we do here. Having said that, though, I still do believe that freedom of information is a necessity. Dude, the CIA fucking sucks, dude. What happened? The CIA's like fucking Stan Twitter at this point. Like, can't do shit to real racists, so they just go after their own fucking content creators, you know, to get like a half-assed apology, and then, you know, they'll pat their backs, be like, yeah, we defeated racism. Hell yeah, dude. Where's the old CIA? I mean, actually, when you think about it, like, old CIA, incredibly efficient, incredibly deadly, and murdered a bunch of, like, you know, black revolutionary Americans. You know what I mean? Thank God that they suck now. Please don't push the bumbling empire lie. I mean, America is still incredibly efficient and incredibly brutal. Don't get me wrong. But it is kind of funny that, like, there's a lot of shit that they miss, dude. I mean, even the Haitian assassination, right? At first, I was like, this is probably not an American op. And I still don't know if it's an American op or not, because the person that they murdered in Haiti is an American puppet. Sure, he didn't want to leave power, but he was still a neoliberal American puppet. That was like the guy that was their guy. Wait, people actually is an op? Freedom is everything. We support the Cuban people in their fight for freedom in Cuba. Libertad ya viene y llegando. Eso es Cuba. Dude, he's Mr. Worldwide, dude. You know what else is worldwide? The CIA. Why do you think he's called anyone who has fled Cuba a gusano? Like, sorry, my family didn't want to starve. This is a point of contention for a lot of people. The term gusanex, okay, or gusano. You know that this is like something that people are very upset about. Not every single person that left Cuba is incredibly wealthy, but a lot of the people that originally left Cuba are, and left Cuba specifically because their lands were being seized and their slaves were being freed. That's where that concept comes from. And gusano is just means worm in Spanish. I talked about this yesterday. It's the people that fled because they were wealthy and did not want they did not like that their wealth was being taken from them. Their land was being taken from them. It's not like an ethnic slur. I don't want people to say like it's a fucking ethnic slur. It's literally the same as like if you're fucking a rich political dissident against a socialist country. Like it's not, that's what it means. It's like crying about the term cracker. Now, is it being misappropriated? Do like white leftists use it randomly on anyone that they consider to be like Cuban or of Cuban descent, no matter if they're like the Elizabeth Warren of being Cuban? Yeah, they do, because they're fucking white leftists. They don't know any better. They think it's like a cool new term that they fucking found, and they're just like dropping it. But to claim that this is like the same as the N-word or something like that is fucking ridiculous. Good luck. Hopefully you can build a mass momentum, a mass movement by like, I don't know, reaching out to like Ana Navarro or something and start crying about that term. But I mean, the people asking for freedom in Cuban streets because of their authoritarian government aren't rich. No, I know there's a difference. It's almost like there are a bunch of different groups within a country that want different things, some of which are completely reasonable and others that are not. Shocking. I know. Yeah, I know everybody wants like a fun little Disney story about like, here are the evil people and here are the good people, okay? But it doesn't work that way. The U.S. involvement in Cuba for like the past 60 years makes it nearly impossible to develop liberties like free internet, etc. gradually. Chomsky referred to this as Cuba needing constant wartime measures on its institutions. I mean, it is true. They are constantly under war. If America were to lift the sanctions, lift the embargo, allow Cuba to participate in global trade, allow Cuba to fucking build whatever infrastructure they need to build to have as robust an internet as they possibly can, it would perhaps make it easier for the CIA to even do their infiltration and run their campaigns. But they don't want to do that. That's why they have to engage in hip-hop war and fake Twitter.
The comments came a day after thousands of Cubans poured into the streets, protesting against the communist government, triggered by food shortages, rising prices, and the government's response to rising COVID infections. Cuban authorities appear to have blocked access to social media sites like Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram. Dozens of people have been reportedly arrested in the protests, including journalists. Many demonstrators were also injured in clashes with...
This shit is unacceptable, right? Obviously, I'm never going to fucking side with police brutality against peaceful protesters. No, it's hilarious that these motherfuckers are like showing police brutality. It's hilarious that they're showing police brutality and like the conservatives are like, unacceptable. We need to liberate these Cubans. It's like, motherfucker, you literally last year, you were arguing to murder black people on the streets. And now you're like, I can't believe police brutality is happening. Bro, this is literally a light fucking slap in comparison to the tear gas, rubber bullets, and like and all the other kettling, corralling actions that the American police engage in on a regular basis. Like, this is not a defense. It's still unacceptable regardless, right? But holy fuck, this authoritarian communist country seems really pleasant in comparison to what the fuck is going on in America on a regular basis, dude. Are you going to address how the food shortages are caused by rampant corruption and failed socialist farming policies? Or just continue to insinuate that America is responsible for everything wrong in Cuba? I love this take. Let's say you're correct. Let's say you're completely correct that like it's failed farming because it's communism, right? Except in America, one of the closest systems that we have to communism is literally our fucking agricultural production, which is heavily subsidized, right up there with like central planning that plays a fundamental role in our extraction industry as well. But hey, let's forget about that for a second. Let's say that you are correct, that like this incredibly horrible, corrupt authoritarian government is like fucking up everything and like, you know, fucking up agriculture, right? Let's say that's true. And why the fuck do you need an embargo, brother? They're already fucking it up. Let them fuck it up. It almost feels like America feels the need to tilt the scales for some reason. That's really strange to me. Going forward, if you want to criticize Cuba, you have to advocate to lift the embargo. Straight up, lift all embargoes. Normalize relationships with Cuba, behave like Cuba is a normal fucking country, and we can move on from that point. Like, it's nuts to me. The reason why I see Cuba as a success story, which will trigger a lot of fucking Cubans living in Miami and shit, because like, you know, their parents fucking absolutely despise the current administration there. But like, the reason why I see it as a success story is because they've been able to persevere through insanity. Okay. That's nuts. It absolutely is a success story. It's not a success story. It's a success story for all of the factors considered. What are the neolib talking points for defending the embargo at this point? I don't know. I actually don't fucking know what the defense of the embargo is. It's just that people don't care. That's the reality. People don't care about the protests happening in Cuba one way or the other. The only way that, outside of like actual Cubans, the real reason why people are having this conversation over and over again is because you can make a fucking political point against communism or what you consider to be communist. That is the only reason why people fucking talk about this. And that's why you hear the exact same takes from people like Joe Biden and also Marco Rubio. Okay, that's it. These people don't give a fuck about what happens to Cuban people. If they did, they would lift the embargoes immediately. Okay.
The Castro brothers, this is a murdering communist dictatorship. Again,
I talked about this yesterday, but like, it's a murderous communist dictatorship, murderous communist dictatorship, murderous communist dictatorship. America has consistently murdered more and will continue to murder more for the rest of fucking time, okay? The previous Batista administration that was a dictatorship, authoritarian, fascist dictatorship, killed more than 20,000 people, according to the CIA, in a matter of the 7-year time span that it was around. The Castro regime did not reach anywhere near those numbers in fucking the 60 plus years that they were fucking in power, okay? Nowhere near those numbers. So this notion that like, oh, dude, it was so bad. It was so bad. They were fucking murdering people all the time. It's like, dude, it's kind of weird that America is like literally having this conversation.
It always has been. From the very beginning, they stole land, they oppressed people, none of the promises given to the people were ever fulfilled.
Stole land, by the way. Notice how he said he stole land. Who did he steal land from? You motherfucker. This is literally, okay, hold on. Let me describe something here. It was absolutely unacceptable of the federal government to come in to the South and change the way of life of Southerners and their heritage and steal their property. Completely unacceptable. Abolishing slavery. That's the way to describe abolishing fucking slavery in the United States, okay? What he's talking about is literally stealing land and freeing fucking slaves, dude. He's currently talking about stealing plantation lands and expropriating it for everyone. Nationalizing it and taking slave plantations and like freeing fucking slaves, stealing land from slavers. It's the type of shit that we should have done in America, motherfucker. Instead of giving reparations to the slavers, because those are the people that actually got reparations in the United States of America, a fucking stain that lives on in American history. We should have just taken the fucking land. Some instances, plantations were offered to the slaves that were newly liberated. It was a short-lived Reconstruction period. Come the fuck on, dude.
It's 10:30, still no word from Joe, and then this tepid...
Again, same energy as people fucking crying about Joe Biden not literally assassinating like a Palestinian child on camera. He did everything. He did everything you could. Exactly what Donald Trump would have done for Israel. Just didn't use the same fucking words. And Republicans were still fucking crying about it. It's like, that's ridiculous. Marco Rubio and Joe Biden's takes were identical on Cuba. Shut the fuck up, Sean Hannity. Donald Trump added a fuckload of sanctions onto Cuba. And if I'm not mistaken, Joe Biden did not lift those sanctions. So much for normalizing relationships with Cuba and, like, you know, going back to the Obama era. House Democrats call on Biden to lift Trump's Cuba sanctions as its regime faces growing democratic protests. Let me tell you something. This conversation about Cubans protesting more autonomy or Cubans protesting for less police brutality, great. More power to them, okay? But if you ask most Cubans living in fucking Cuba, I'm certain that they would probably feel like the American sanctions are significantly worse than anything the fucking government is doing to them. Even fucking Florida Cubans, for the most part, believe that. Airstrikes in Cuba are now being floated on the news TV channel.
No, I don't think the embargo is cruel at all. And I think that the Cuban people are not asking for a lifting of the embargo. They're going out in the streets every single day talking about the failure of the communist regime to provide for its people. And what should be being contemplated right now is a coalition a potential military action in Cuba, similar to what has happened in both administrations, in both Republican and Democrat administrations. In Republican with Bush in Panama, they deposed Noriega.
Okay, I need to know what the fuck this dude's like deal is, dude. Francis, what's his dad do? What does this dude's dad do? That's what I need to know, okay? He was the first Cuban-born mayor of Miami. Oh my God, his dad was the fucking mayor of Miami too. God damn it, I hate this country so much. Oh yeah, dude. Oh my fucking God, dude. I don't know why it's good to compare what Castro did to what the U.S. did to people. Is literally what Sean Hannity does. Yes, embargo should be lifted. Yes, Castro was bad. Totally, dude. Okay. When people say yes, Castro was bad, I want to ask them, like, how do you transition out of a fascist authoritarian state under military command without violence? Do you kiss them? Do you give them little kissy boo-boos? Like, what do you do? Just because you don't fucking have any historical context does not mean that there's any other fucking way. Do you vote them out, dude? Do you give them Pepsi? You go, vote them out, dude. Vote Batista out. Shut the fuck up. Unfortunately, violence is a fundamental part of politics, okay? Who gets to do the violence and how the violence is done is literally kind of at the heart of politics. It's a distribution of power game. Obviously, violence is another demonstration of power. Saying Castro bad is not equal to Batista good. Okay, but like, people say he was fucking murderous and bad and stole their fucking land. That's the problem. People don't say Castro's bad because his administration was really fucking authoritarian in the aftermath of the revolution. In the aftermath of the Cuban Revolution, they betrayed the Marxist-Leninist principles and values that they believed in. And you can have a fucking argument about like why that happened, okay? And how much involvement from the United States and interference from the United States and the decision Castro made to cooperate with the USSR plays a role in that. But that's a completely separate argument. That's a completely separate argument. That's not to say, like, I can't believe fucking Castro was bad because he stole land and murdered people. Like, yeah, of course he did, dude. You can't say one murder is bad and another murder is good. Okay, are you gonna fucking sit here and cry about the Allied forces in World War II then? Is that what you're gonna do? Sorry, I'm a humanitarian. I think the American forces should not have actually purged the Nazis, dude. It's really fucked up. Like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Wait a minute. This protest footage that they're showing has... Wait, this is a fucking pro-revolution protest. Oh my God. Are you fucking kidding me, dude? The protest B-roll that they're using on Fox News is literally a pro-revolution protest, dude. Oh my fucking God. They're literally using anti-government protest. Bro, this is literally a pro-government protest. The 26th of July movement is a Cuban vanguard revolutionary organization and is the political party led by Fidel Castro. The movement's name commemorates his 26th of July 1953 attack on the army barracks on Santiago de Cuba in an attempt to start overthrowing the dictator Fulgencio Batista. It's like literally the equivalent of waving a Fidel Castro photo, which they might literally have right there. If I were able to zoom in to that, I wonder if that's actually a fucking Castro photo that they're holding up. Oh my God, dude. So what are those people protesting about? I think there are also mass protests happening right now in the country that revolve around lifting the embargoes as well. People are genuinely fucking criticizing the government because they're not getting fucking food and they're not getting medical supplies. But a big part of the issue revolves around not having access to, like, for example, syringes. You know what I mean? U.S. President Biden says no to defunding the police. Biden calls on Cuban regime to listen to protesters. Yo, that is fucking funny as shit. So you mean to tell me that Fox News unironically aired anti-Cuba protest footage that was actually pro-revolution? They literally have the 26 Julio flags up. That's a pro-Castro protest. And then they also showed more fucking footage. And they blurred the actual writing on there because you could read it. They blurred the footage that says these streets belong to the revolution. Worth mentioning, the media isn't covering protests in Brazil against Bolsonaro, as well as the Chilean and Colombian protests. They also didn't cover the protests against the fucking Haitian president that were heating up, and chatters were yelling at me for not covering it, and now I feel bad about it. I wonder why the mainstream media never covered that. Well, because if it's their fucking patsies, if it's their puppets, then they don't talk about it. This is just a way to garner support against a foreign adversary that is ideologically a threat to America's capitalist hegemony, okay? That's all this is. Anyway, I'm glad that we can all agree, though, that we should lift the embargo.